Who is this irresistible creature who has an insatiable love for the...
Hello, and welcome to Crawling Through the Crypt, Episode 3. I am your host, Raven, and with me as always is the lovely and talented Angelique. Hi, Angelique.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. We thought we'd talk about Valhalla Rising this week. It's a Danish film directed by Nicholas Refn, starring Mads Mikkelsen, who you may know or may not know was the villain in the last James Bond movie, Casino Royale.
Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and give us a little synopsis of this film, Angelique, and then we can talk about it a little bit.
Okay, I'll be glad to. Well, the film is divided into 6 parts, and each part gets its own little title.
Kind of like chapters.
Yes, yes. The first one is called Wrath, and it's about a one-eyed warrior. He's kept prisoner as a slave of a Norse tribe who use him to fight for money in a mud pit. He has a collar, a chain around his neck, and it's stuck to a pole in the ground. And he's been traded to another tribe. The next chapter is called Silent Warrior, and on his way to the other tribe, he somehow manages to kill all his captors, except for the boy who's been his caretaker, who he's formed a relationship with. They meet up with a bunch of Christian warriors who invite them to travel to the Holy Land, and they decide to do this.
These are crusaders, in essence. They want to go to the Holy Land and fight for glory and for God.
Yes, yes. Part 3 is called Men of God, and they're sailing on a Viking vessel, very sparse, about as big as this room here, and a mysterious fog comes in and blankets them, and the wind stops, and everyone dozes, and there's a very eerie silence. Okay, part 4 is called the Holy Land. The group finally reaches an unknown land that they believe is the Holy Land, and arrows start zinging out from the forest and the trees. Very mysterious. Part 5 is called Hell. The warriors face fear after they imbibe an unknown substance from a pot that they share, and each has their own horrific vision. Very unique horrific visions. And they come to believe that one eye has brought them to hell. And they start killing each other. Part 6, the resolution, is called Sacrifice. One Eye and the boy are surrounded by local natives, and the warrior sacrifices himself to save the boy.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much a good synopsis of the film. I thought the movie was very, very good. I liked... There's very little dialogue throughout the film, and I liked that. It tended to add a little bit of mystery to it, keeping it sort of avant-garde, along with the great shots of the countryside, filmed mostly in the Scottish Highlands. It's absolutely beautiful, very convincing as a Viking land, if you will.
Very spare, yeah.
Yes, indeed. I think that some of the special effects were very well done.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have one scene where One Eye he digs his fingers into one of his captor's abdomen, and he rips it right open and takes his guts out. How they managed to do that, and it's so convincing.
It's very good. There's a skull crushing scene with a rock that's very good. So there's not a whole lot of gore in this, but what there is done very well. And you know, if you're a gorehound, you'll like what they have for you.
Now there were a lot of complaints from critics about the lack of dialogue and about the scene that we told you about on the boat, where everybody's silent for so long, about the lack of, again, the lack of words. This was a time when people had, you know, language was new. You know, you're talking about 1000 AD. Language was relatively new for these people, for our ancestors. So that they were being true to the time.
Right, they didn't have a whole lot to say anyway.
But a great deal was conveyed by facial expressions, by actions, by so that it wasn't really problematic. I think that the problem may have been, and one critic said it pretty well, that it was advertised as a Danish 300, so that you came expecting lots of action and you got lots of silence.
Right.
But it really wasn't. That really wasn't a problem if you were into the story and you were paying attention to facial expressions and you were paying attention to the bodies and the
Right. You got a lot
subtext.
of mystery and a lot of.
Yeah.
Now let's talk just real quick. Can we touch on One Eye's visions? There were points throughout the film where One Eye the screen would go all red, crimson color, and he would have a vision, and shortly thereafter, that would happen in the film. Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you think that comes into play?
Well, the visions were interesting too, because at the beginning of each vision was One Eye's face itself. So it was as though you needed a little tag with it that this is One Eye's vision, because there's One Eye at the beginning of it. I think we figured out that once screen goes crimson that it's One Eye's vision, but there at the beginning of it, each one was One Eye's little face. But that was how he survived. He seemed to be gifted with prophecy. He wasn't gifted with language. He was mute for some reason.
No, he didn't speak one word the entire film.
But strangely enough, the leader of the last tribe that owned him spoke directly to him. And we're going to guess that he would have examined his body pretty minutely, so he might have had a tongue. We don't know, one way or another.
He might not have understood their language, too. He might not have been able to respond. He clearly wasn't of them. Can we talk a little bit about his relationship with the boy? Now this boy was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old.
Could have been up to 13 or 14.
There's allusions in the film that One Eye had been captive and a fighter for many years, probably as much as 10 or 15 years. So this boy would have grown up with him his whole life.
Yeah, One Eye's body is you can tell he's in the prime of life. He's absolutely male at the height of his powers, but he's grayed in his beard and his hair. But the boy, they call him his ward, they call him all kinds of things, but throughout the movie there's what little dialogue there is, they talk a lot about fathers and sons. And maybe he's adopted him.
Well, I think they have an intuitive relationship where One Eye doesn't speak, but the boy speaks through him. In fact, the Crusaders, when they met them, they asked why the boy is speaking for the man. And they just One Eye seems to be able to convey his thoughts and feelings to the boy without much effort, and the boy talks for him.
There's only one moment of levity in the entire film, and it's the Crusaders ask, what's his name, and the boy looks at him, he goes, One Eye, and afterward, the One Eye looks at him and raises his one eyebrow, and the boy says, well, you only have one eye.
And you needed a name, so that's fair enough, I suppose.
And you may notice when you come to the end of the film, something was missing from the film. What was missing from the film? Ladies!
Well, I don't know why that's such a point for you, Angelique. I mean, it's a film about Viking warriors in the day. There just weren't a whole lot of women in that particular field. I'm not saying there weren't women, obviously, but they weren't warriors. They weren't fighters. They were at home, doing those types of things.
Yeah, but you're seeing a village. You'd think you'd see half of humanity as you're seeing a village.
I don't recall seeing a village. At what point did we see a village?
At the beginning, when we're seeing a fight, you'd think you'd see some villagers milling around a village.
I got the feeling that this fighting arena was separate from where they might live. They all kind of sat on rocks and sat around.
But the second time, too, we encounter a village. We see no villagers. Except for the... Go ahead. We do see one shot of ladies.
I don't recall a village in any way, but okay.
The second time we encounter a village, we do see some ladies. They're a pile of naked ladies. Honestly, we're talking a pile. Like someone threw them in a pile, and they're all naked. And it's raining, and they're in a pile.
And they appeared to be captive, to some extent.
That was kind of odd.
It was an odd image. The whole film is filled with unusual images.
Yeah.
You know, that may or may not have. Well, they clearly have some meaning to the director and the writers and all of that, but they're not always clear to the viewer. What does this particular image mean? But they go together to make a whole. You know, if you take the sum of its parts, its whole is greater than the sum of its parts, indeed.
And I mentioned the ladies because I want to say this movie has so many things in it to analyze. If you're somebody who wants to take something apart and look for connections, and oh, this movie is rich with that.
Certainly, I think you could watch this film 10 times and take something different away and get deeper into it each time, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say that this is particularly a horror film, although, Angelique,
It's a gruesome film.
there are horrific moments,
Yes.
and there is some gore, but I wouldn't say it falls in the horror genre per se.
It has rape in it.
Most horror fans who aren't looking for quick thrills or quick slasher type films will enjoy it. If you're willing to sit through a good story and watch some beautiful visuals, you'll like this. Certainly people that like sword and sandal movies will like it as well. Angelique, is there any final words that you have on this?
What a good thinking person's movie it is. What a good story. Really.
Concur. How many eviscerated torsos would you give Valhalla Rising?
I would give it 10 actually.
Wow, a 10.
Yeah, I
A
would.
10 from Angelique. Why
No flaws. There were
why
no
so
flaws.
many?
It was a tight story.
Mhm.
It was well resolved. It was well acted. And it was one of those rare things that you can see with a period piece where there were absolutely no flashes to modern day.
True.
They didn't mess
Now,
up at all.
Let me ask you this question though. There was a point when, and it only happened in one moment in the film, and it only happened twice when they dropped an F-bomb. Do you think that they were saying the F word back in Viking days?
That's an old word.
No, I believe
And
its
it's an
origins
English
are
word
more
too.
medieval.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't matter. So maybe there was a word in Norse culture that meant the same thing. It certainly conveyed what you wanted it to convey. Now I'm going to give the film 8 eviscerated torsos.
Okay.
I'm a little more harsh. I loved its creepy, mysterious atmosphere. I thought Mads Mikkelsen was amazing as One Eye. I thought the boy did
Boy, it was good.
just a tremendous job. A little more action would have been good for me. But overall, I think it was a fine film, and I highly recommend it. Wouldn't you?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
Well, that's all for Valhalla Rising. Be sure and tune in again. We'll review another fine horror film. And until next time, horror on.